first, I'd like to welcome Alok on the stage. Mithun is here joining us for the second part of the talk, and he'll be taking it forward.
Thank you so much for welcoming us into the React fraternity, and we are happy to meet a lot of these very interesting topics and folks that we come across doing this, right? And it's definitely going to be an interesting session.
Yeah, looking forward.
Great.
So, with that being said, I'll hand it over to you so that you can share your screen and take it forward from here.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will just quickly share my side. Can you confirm if you can see my slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you can. Oh, perfect. All right. I don't know if you see my right. I am sharing the wrong screen. Sorry. This should be better. Is it better?
Yes.
Great. All right. Since the conversation is not to introduce new concepts or topics, but this is what I do, right? Myself and Alok, we regularly work and finding out different solutions, what each of us have come across from different problem statements. And I just quickly jump in. So we usually call it as fireside chat at Epam, right? And that's what we're going to do here as well. Right. Again, quickly, this is me. I'll just quickly skip slides here, and there's Alok, who's my partner in crime with a lot of this technical stuff. And yes, so I'm directly jumping into the problem statement. Right. Hey, Alok.
Hey, Mithun.
Hey, man. Hope you're very nice. Yeah, it's been long since we spoke about problems and how do we solve them, right?
Awesome. Yes, exactly. And I'm so looking forward to talking to you about the same.
Very interesting. So something that came up, it's not a new concept, but something that came up and started, creating problems around one of the solutions that we're working on. We're working on something like a dashboard like this. This is not exactly the one that we're using, but a little bit more complex, an event-driven, data-intensive dashboard. And I wanted to show you some interesting stuff that I found out. Are you good? Do you have the time?
Yeah, of course. Why not? Let's go ahead.
Great. Yeah. So what happened was, if you look at the leftmost corner of this, right, we usually have dashboards. But then one of this customer actually said that they need to have some actionable call to actions, right? You have a drop down, you could have a button, you could have some filters, and this applied to the whole context of this dashboard, right? And this was a problem. I mean, this is a very common ask that I see nowadays coming, right? And they look at a lot of these data based business solutions, and this is what is being expected from a React application. But React application wasn't built across a business intelligence system, right? It's more like a facade, a web interface for folks, right? I'm pretty sure you would have come across a few of them.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time, it's very common, right? So this is one small solution. It's not the Excalibur for all of them. I'm trying to find out one single solution for this. And I did some base analysis, right? I looked at some of these charts, and then I saw a lot of blocking data, right? I have a total blocking time of 4 seconds, and this wasn't looking great. I see a long running rendering tasks, and some of these inputs, not a great looking graph, to be honest, right? And this is what drove me to find out a solution. And fortunately, unfortunately, since I'm not able to show the solution, what I did a quick mock-up of what my problem was, right? Can I open and show you one? I did a simple mock-up just to show
that
you
would be great. Yeah, that would be great because we cannot just showcase the whole solution. So maybe a bit and pieces will be great, right?
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what I did is, this is one widget. Imagine in a dashboard of one widget that's data intensive. Okay, here I have quickly mocked up a UI, and there is quite a few amount of data that is there that mocks an API, right? It's just a huge data API that we're looking for. And in the left top corner, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you able to see my screen, by the way?
Not exactly the project. Now it is visible.
Now
Yes.
it is? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, this is what I mocked up. And if you see the graph here, this is what I wanted to show as part of my one widget, right? And I also put in an FPS counter here on top left corner to show the problem that I'm facing. Okay. Now the data bandwidth that I've worked with is something like this. You take a section or slice of it, and it's pretty smooth. It's pretty smooth. I can slide and it keeps rendering and I'm fine. But as soon as I increase the data capacity and it starts lagging, look at my FPS drop all the way from 60 FPS to 9 FPS. I'm actually dragging it really slow. I mean, it's like jittery all the way, right? And
Yeah.
this isn't always the case. I mean, customer can come back and say, I don't need so much data, but this
Correct.
isn't, this could happen. So this is what I wanted to solve, right? And I have one more problem statement I can quickly show you is this Pokemon. I used to be a Pokemon fan, and that's why I did it. So this is another app that I built that used to filter, very common auto suggest and filtering, right? So here I'll show you another aspect where now I'm running all this on a Mac, right? But obviously it's going to be slightly fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throttle it down a bit. Where's my scroll? All right. I'm just going to do it only 4x times. Okay. Now, what's the usual funda is we want to quickly do a filtering, right? So let's say Charmander. I'm already typing in. It's not even appearing in my text box. See?
Yeah, I can see that it's too slow.
You can see the significant lag, right? And I'm not sure if you have come across this. You would have implemented pagination and suspense and all that to kind of mitigate this. And this isn't a good experience for us because by human standards, right? Any application, we look at least 60 FPS frame rate. All right, that's the best, perfect. 60 FPS is close to 50 milliseconds of render time plus some extra tasks. But ideally, in most of these applications, except for simple ones, it's never the case. Right? We never hit those 50 milliseconds.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to see if it's something that we could help mitigate or bypass to an extent so that we are good. We don't have a lot of block rendering happening, right? And I quickly took a look at how React works, and this is all we know, right? Virtual DOM and how it runs on single thread for rendering. And basically you block the whole thread while rendering is happening and then do the commit. So this is the timeline between which, you can actually, once this is done, this is the only time then you can start interacting with your solution, right? And this timeline actually indicates your total blocking time. Yeah. So your TPT Web Vital actually indicates this. And some long running applications are having this problem. So I just quickly took out some of them that I think will be a victim for this. One is collaboration tools, something like a Notion where you can collaborate in live, e-commerce tools, data heavy dashboards, chat applications, real time. So basically any type of data system that has frequent state change, could be because of event driven or it could be because of near real time data processing. So I just quickly listed this, but I'm not sure if you see any more opportunities, right? I'm trying to solve here.
Yeah, so the use case which you have mentioned here makes sense, but I also think about since a lot of people might be might not feel we are in a sync because they all use upgraded systems and they all use great internet speeds. But I see a great use case in respect of creating a project for the wider audience, I would say.
Right.
People who are working in the remote areas. So in the remote areas, you don't get a possibility of having a great machine, for example, like Mac or maybe a Windows system, which has a great configuration. They don't have it, right? And along with the not having a very good internet bandwidth. So once you don't have these opportunities, you fail to get the experience of what people are experiencing in non-remote areas. And I see a lot of possibility. Once you create a product around this concept, you are expanding the horizon and eventually getting more ROI from the product, which is, I believe, which every company or as an individual want, right? So this is something which I come across while I touch base upon these concepts.
Great. Yeah, you are actually right. I can give you some idea, right? So I'll just quickly show you what I had in mind. If you see, this is the regular render cycle, right? You have an original render task, and the usual funda with React is you have a single thread, a main blocking thread. It does is rendering complete, just like how I show you the render and commit phase, right? But I really want to interrupt. right? And this concept is not new. This has been there with React from 2019, and they have been working on this solution to prioritizing tasks, right, especially user interactions. And but then this actually got coined somewhere 2 years back, and this was addressed in previous React events as well. But I don't see a lot of folks who diligently try out this, and that's what I wanted to share this with you and see if we can promote this, right? So the thing is, we don't want the UI to get blocked or make the user wait for interaction. If it's something that you need to interact immediately, then you can make the other components wait. That can be lazily loaded, or it's a very common concept that we used to do, right? That's what I'm trying to solve here, right? And this was one of the flows that I think, is there a way that you could prioritize my rendering? I have my high priority render and low priority render. And in 2019, React had this built internally. They haven't shipped it yet, but what they did was they let us actually prioritize some of our renderings. So we can actually queue them in a specific queue and say that we had a lot of control over the events that were queued and rendering tasks that were queued. And this was great, right? This was great, but there are some caveats to it. It's not that you need to give an extensive. They need to build an abstraction and not complicate it as for us, because there were some complexities with event handling there. And that's when this idea came up with concurrency, right? So you have some high priority updates for state, use reducers, syncing with the external store. These are always usually the high priority updates. And low priority updates are the ones that you want to lazily load. You want to have some action that's a long running API. That was a concept that was coined. And yes, and that's when concurrence came into being. But I'll just quickly show you some other concepts that all of us use, right, very regularly. That's one is debounce, memoization, virtualized list, and optimizing codes. This is one of the usual suspects that we do while trying to optimize our user experience. But apart from this, I'm pretty sure you would have tried all of them, right?
Yes, exactly. Like, most of them, or majority of them. And I'm pretty sure, like, the people who have joined us have also used these features in the first place. Yes.
Exactly. So I'm just going to add one more item to this list, and that's this concurrency. And I will show you the same example that I showed a few slides back, that how concurrency actually changed the experience. See, this is not to teach what is concurrency, but to leverage, concurrency in a way that will possibly fix some of those areas that you could work without debounce. See, I really don't want to debounce or input, right? Like, I don't want the user to have a 2 second or a 3 second debounce and then do the switch. That's not the idea, right? That's there for a specific solution. But concurrency is a little bit more wider top, wherein it could help you with good interaction. I can quickly show you instead of me explaining. See, what am I going to change? It's the same line of code. What I'm going to change is I have this new hook that was introduced as part of concurrence. So that hook is part of use transition. And in this hook, we had a method called start transition. That's all I did. If you see the long running method, I just wrapped it. And this means that I'm trying to deprioritize, right? I'm trying to deprioritize this call over the other rendering aspects. That's it. Now I've done it. Now look at the same screen. If I start scrolling, look at the FPS doesn't even drop, even if I go really fast, right? Doesn't drop. The idea is it's trying to deprioritize my low running renders with over a high priority. My high priority is my movement. See, this is my high priority event. This doesn't stop, right? And
Yeah.
it's not complete rendering. If you just look at the top of, there's a loader that I put just to indicate it. Only when I stop, the loader actually starts loading, right? And then I get an update. That's why it's quite quick and my FPS doesn't drop, right? Otherwise, for every move I do, it'll keep on rendering and it's going to be a blocking UI. Same thing applies to you. You see where I'm going, right? You see the kind
Yeah.
of performance difference that you see here, right?
Yeah, I can see that. Like, that's a drastic change, as we've already shown, like, in the FPS format. It's really impressive to see that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This looks really good. But this is one even for while trying to learn filtering. This is something even everybody does, right? We want to filter list. Earlier, you
Right.
remember the Charmander was really slow.
Yes.
Look at how quick I'm typing. I'm typing it that quick, and it's responsive. I can still throttle it down for you. That's the best part, right? Even if I throttle it a lot, this is still going to be performant. Let's say I do a 6x throttling. I used to do a 4x throttling. Right? See, it's that quick, that quick. So the idea is not to, it doesn't make the solution quick. It is just that we prioritize some parts of the application to load slower over some other parts of the application. We really don't want to block the input field here, right? That's the idea. I can render the results later on. And
Yeah.
this is what I'm trying to achieve. Hope this has a lot of good application to the areas that you're also implementing. I'm thinking this could help you.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. I'll just show you what what are the approaches that I've tried out. There are a lot more. I've not gone extensive in this, but I'm trying to just give you a gist of what the solution is about. Yes, the first one was definitely a start transition. So start transition is the one that you try and wrap your long running methods that you want to deprioritize. Go to a low priority queue over your high priority actions. For example, it could be your long running API, it could be an extensive operation that you do internally, some animation. All this could be part of your transition API. And I think this is the exact wrap that I showed you earlier. And if you see, if you notice, there is one more flag that is there at is pending. Is pending
Yeah.
is also associated with use transition. And since this is a long running task, we would like to have some feedback or a callback to let us know that your task is still running, right? And this is the guy who would give you that feedback, right? He lets
Absolutely.
you know if it's still running. So I see that's a good flow. And the second one that I've used is actually use deferred value. These are the one of the basic mainstream hooks we use as part of concurrent that I have tried out, and it works really well. The only difference between use transition and use deferred value is it's quite similar, but primarily used when we don't have access to the state changing function. All right. For example, you want to
Yeah.
call an API, and you don't have access to it. You don't have access to that method, right? Because there is no direct control over it. And then that's when you want to wrap it with the use deferred value. That means it's taking time to load that value, and then you still put it under low priority, not as part of your main thread, right? And it's
Right.
not blocking. So this is just an alternative of state transition, but with a different context. And the third that I used was suspense. Oh, this was interesting because I remember I thought myself as an expert in suspense with all the React 16 and 17, but there are some good things that I learned about this new suspense capability, especially with the hydration aspect of React. So suspense here actually uh, prioritize how my rendering needs to happen. It can have low priority renders or hydration when I wrap my component or part of my component in suspense, right? And your fallback, the fallback UI that we usually build with suspense, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And this hydration was giving me time. Let's say it takes me 500 milliseconds to render a page,
Correct.
and the immediate actionable items are within the 300 millisecond queue. That means I really don't have to wait for the whole 500 seconds for my page to render, right? I can block it. I can say I can deprioritize some part of my component under suspense, and then it quickly loads. The users still get to interact with the other parts of the application, and and this is the interesting part, you can actually suspend it, right? When you have look, let's imagine that you have initiated a long running task, and at some point, right now you can't, right? At some point you want to stop it and change some parameters, right? And
Correct.
your suspense is running, your loader is running, and there is no way you stop it. You basically wait for it to load and complete.
Correct.
But with this update, you can actually stop the rendering. You can actually interact with this suspense and stop the rendering and do a fresh new fetch if required. And that's, I think, gives a good user experience, right?
Yeah.
And another feature that I saw was suspense list. right? Till now, I think you get the idea of why Suspense could help. I mean, at least the updated Suspense with the
Yeah.
user
So, yeah, I could see that. So basically, previously Suspense was only taking care of like, what should happen when something is loading, but now you can also interact with it once, like, while the process is going on, or while
exactly.
something is like, some changes are being rendered on the page. That's a good use
Exactly.
case, yes.
That's a good use case for me. Yeah, I mean, I felt so. There could be many, but this is one use case that I think helped me a lot. And there is also another thing called suspense list that is not there earlier. It was,
Hmm.
it was recently introduced. I'm talking about again a part of 18, wherein you can club all your suspenses together and say you need to load your suspense in this order, right? You can do a top-down approach or bottom approach, and this is interesting while you're trying to do a single-page application that uses suspense to just like how you have lazy loading, right? You slowly
Right.
want to load them, let's say top down, because some of those outside the fold can still load later on, right? You don't need to, and
Right.
that control also is something that the suspense list has come in, and you can have a common fallback for the whole list of suspenses that you have, right? So once your first component is done, then it can jump into the next component and still, but then you don't have a loader on top of your first component, so you can have a common fallback UI for the whole suspense list as well. I mean, that
Awesome.
looks neat, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I know this might not be a great example to show suspense because you would have all seen suspense multiple times, right? But I still wanted to show you how I wrapped. Excuse me. Usually, when we use suspense, we use states, is loading states, and try to do a fallback check on if this loading is done or something that we regularly do, right? Here. But here, I would not have used this. And this is the component I want to lazily load with suspense. Let's go into that. And yes, that's it. I just say React lazy and that's it. I don't, oh, hold on. Right. And this is the component that I want to slowly load, right? So if you notice, I didn't do much here, right? I really don't want to put locks or states in place. I can handle this directly from my, suspense itself. And I do have my own error boundaries. This is great. And that's it. I can still interact with a lot of this fetch. It doesn't block me. I can still continue, keep on clicking. I'm actually clicking, to be honest, right? And we'll wait for 3 seconds. I've just done a quick 3 second mock, and that's it. See, I'm purposefully disabling this. I don't need to disable. It's not part of React. I can still interact with it. And this is, I think, is definitely good if we can leverage this capability. And yes, and right, coming back to some very important points. Again, as I told you, this is just one small solution from a bag of capabilities React has provided us, right? We have to use this properly. I have burnt my fingers to not planning or designing this properly, where don't put large complex components in a suspense, or don't put large complex components in a start transition. No, you think that will give good user experience, but it will not, because I told you about the low priority and high priority queues. As soon as you start interacting with something in the low priority queue, it jumps from low priority queue to high priority queue, and that is the blocking thread. So you have to be prudent while you're trying to render components in priority, and your user interaction, basically UX plays a big role. You have to look at your information architecture, you have to look at how your layout changes, and also look at how some of the web vitals, right, like INP and TTI, and TTI stand for interactive. And so this is very important. And I see one of my developers try this, right? They suspended the whole app, and it looked great. I mean, it looked great. Wow, that is nice. But as soon as it was lazily loading, and you get components loading and in succession, and it looked great. But what happened was, as soon as some user tried to interact with one of the suspended components or that were rendering slowly, immediately it started becoming a blocking thread. And that's how React works, right? that's how it works, right? So that's an idea. That's why you have to try to diligently design this, and then always try and monitor your application. You use React Dev tools and Chrome tools, because I had this problem. Right? See, thing is, React 18 does a batch. It's not only with React 18. You have batch state update, right, happening, and it's all rendered together. It's not rendered separately. If you have 10 components and a lot of them have state updates, they are batched together and rendered. And this is a good thing, right? But when you try to use concurrent, all right, this changes. You are basically prioritizing which has to render, which has not. And that you have to use judiciously. And how do you monitor is with some of these performance tools, right? Alok, do you see, this list, right, is not different from the regular advice we get as part of implementation. If you notice that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And end of the day, we are trying to make it really slick for the user. So
Right.
I personally think these are the points that I had a tough time with, which I've learned the hard way. And
Yeah.
please feel free to share your thoughts. I mean, this is not exhaustive, to be honest with you.
Yeah, of course. So basically, I would like to add here is, as you have already mentioned before, that a proper design is required. So while you are in a phase of designing in designing your page or designing your product, in the development phase, you can definitely make sure that what are the things which you want to prioritize further, right? So for example, any event-driven based items or any elements input or maybe a checkbox or something like that. If you have that, you can definitely wrap those things using these knowledges, but it's not a very good idea to have all those things wrapped in in a large chunk based code, because of
Right.
one of the reasons which you have already mentioned, that if you're not able to, let's say, interact with the website in the first place, you're not going to like the user experience in the first place. And this is not going to happen to a lot of folks, but yes, if you have any issues with your system, or if you have any issues with your internet bandwidth, I believe you're going to have a tough time. And I believe it's very important in one aspect, because accessibility is one place where we take care of the people who have challenges, but there are other challenges as well which you can see, like for example internet or system. So we also have to consider these things while we design something, and not make overdo something, which we have discussed already.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of areas that I would recommend is, see, one is, I told you that's a low priority and a high priority queue. Basically, it's actually causing it to be rendered twice, and that is not a great in some use cases, right? Especially like the ones that you said, it's a large component and heavy component, complex component, right? You could look at memoization, you could look at virtualizing and all that, right? So it could cause rendering issues. Then also there is this race condition, especially with this concurrency and the way that you manage your state. So that's something that I would request anybody who's working to invest some time to look at the state, and how the state shouldn't do a race round condition with concurrency, right? These are two areas that I had a tough time with. I thought I'll just share it with you and all of us, right?
Mhm.
And if possible, go and look at React's code. It's very interesting. Look at how it shells out every 5 milliseconds. It looks at both the queues and how it controls, gives back the control to rendering, and it's quite interesting. Look at so I just see if I can put that reference here. Yeah, yeah. Look at the scheduler JS file that is there in the React GitHub. It's interesting. And I've also quickly tried to list one of the blogs. This was not an official blog, but this is the way that the context of how it works and detailed explanation of how concurrency works was extremely good. In fact, it was really good. He had a lot of metrics associated with it. I thought I could share it with you as well.
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Hey, great man. I mean, this definitely was a good share. I mean, after a very long time, I get to share some technical details with you, and let's see we can leverage this for some of our existing projects. And if you were to migrate from 17 to 18 with concurrency, there'll be a small change in the app. .js, the way that you create, you call your render component here, you'll have to call create root. It's a small change that you'll have to do, but look at your impact analysis properly before you take the solution forward, right?
Yeah,
and work with the UX
absolutely.
team. Great. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. Look,
It was a pleasure's all mine, Nitin. Really wonderful, learning about these few concepts, and I'm definitely gonna use that out in my upcoming projects, and will share my feedback as well, right?
perfect. Sounds great.
Right. Thank you so much,